Hey everybody, I'm here with my brother. For this video, we're actually going to break down the Quentin Tarantino movies from worst to best. This is actually my opinion of what I think is the worst to best, and then Alex right here is going to, argue some of the points and explain, what makes them bad, what makes them good. So we're going to start with number...
How you guys doing? This is Alex. Good to see you guys. Good to hear from you guys, and I hope you guys are all doing really well. And yeah, Tarantino's one of my favorite directors of all time. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this.
And it's funny, you still like him as a director even though you've gotten older. Like some people probably turn on him and think he's overrated, but you really haven't changed, right?
Yeah, no, I haven't changed. He is overrated, but that's because he's one of the only directors out there that's still making movies.
That's still rated.
Still really making movies. So, more on that, as we go along. But yeah, he's absolutely.
I know, there really hasn't been that many. He takes forever to make a new movie, and I think that's what helps him. He doesn't oversaturate the market like, other guys have done in entertainment.
Yeah, no, yeah. Steven Spielberg has done a lot of movies, and he's done a lot of great movies, but he's done some forgettable movies too. The thing with Tarantino is every time he steps up to the plate,
he makes what he wants to make, it seems like.
He does.
He doesn't care,
He delivers. He truly does deliver. Even if you don't like the film altogether, he gives you something you've never seen before.
All right, so whenever you see a worst to best list of Tarantino, the worst one is always pretty much the same. It's always Death Proof.
Right.
So I have Death Proof at number 11 out of the 11 films that we have on this list. But I respect Death Proof. It's a lot of fun. I think it's part of the experience, the adventure of having the double feature, the dual feature, the Grindhouse feature with Robert Rodriguez, and Death Proof was definitely with Kurt Russell was definitely that movie.
The thing with Death Proof, I think it makes sense. It would be last on my list too.
Yeah.
Because the characters aren't deep. There's really no depth. It doesn't really mean anything in the grander scheme. And the greatest movies that have ever been made have always meant something for people that go beyond just, a movie. And this was a B movie. And in my opinion, it was a really fun B movie.
Yeah.
I saw it in a theater with a bunch of bikers and a bunch of rowdy people who went out to see it. And it was made for a specific audience. It wasn't made for a huge audience. And I had fun. I had a lot of fun.
Out of all the movies, if I was a teenage girl, this would probably be the movie I can most connect with out of all of his movies.
Really?
Well, wait. If you think about it,
teenage girl.
Maybe along with Kill Bill, there's a lot of female. There's a very diverse female cast. There's a lot of different young female characters, from the stuntman to the Samuel L. Jackson girl to the pretty girl, the cheerleader girl, and then you had the really tough girl in the beginning, and there was a good character though. I thought Kurt Russell played a good heel character. My favorite part of the movie though is Kurt Russell's car. That's kind of what made him stand out. The car is just so evil looking that the girl said. I think there's a line that said, "I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid of your car." And then the whole group of girls ended up getting killed by the car.
It's my mom's car. That's what he said. He said it was his mom's car.
Oh, really? Oh,
that's what he said.
That was a stuntman car.
It was a joke. But yeah. I can see why you say that. He definitely reflects a camaraderie amongst those women. Another thing to remember is all those women are involved in the movie business somehow.
Right, so one was a stunt woman.
Right, yeah. Stunt woman. One was an actress or a model, and they're all involved in the movie business in some way, shape, or form. And that's Tarantino's. That's his whole world, is people in the movie business. Yeah. So.
No, there was a lot of good stunts in it. They hired a really good stuntman for the chase scenes, and the one thing about the movie that kind of connects the first part of it and the second part of it is I think the original killings happened in Texas, And then Kurt Russell actually got off, but the part of the ruling was he was kicked out of the state of Texas.
Oh, right.
So when he started trying to kill girls again with the car, I think it was in Tennessee, right?
I think you're right.
That the law was, when they investigated it, they said, all right, we'll let him go, but we got to make sure this motherfucker's out of Texas.
Out of Texas.
That was what they discussed in the hospital. That was pretty good writing too. Like, yeah, it wasn't that was kind of.
I agree with that. Yeah, no, I never thought about that, but I'm sure some states are like that. You know, it's we'll let this happen, but it's not going to happen here.
Right.
Not in our backyard. To quote.
Yeah. And wasn't there like a edited version of this movie? Like I think that the version you watch it on DVD, it kind of drags a little bit too long. It's like 2.5 hours almost.
Yeah. That whole scene in the beginning of the second act when they're at the gas station.
Yeah.
Is cut out of the film on the theatrical version.
Of stuff. Yeah. A lot of dialogue too with the black girl in the second half.
Yeah, and
she kind of dominated like the conversation.
That's the thing that she was supposed to be like the female Sam Jackson.
Yeah, right.
And I think a lot of the dialogue. That's why I said the depth isn't quite there, because a lot of that dialogue came off as, okay, some of this is funny, but what's the point of all this? And there really was not a whole lot of point. That's the biggest criticism. Is I think that those girls, those characters, didn't have much meaning, much purpose, and the things that they were talking about, what were they really leading to? Why were we supposed to care? It was really just stuff to get to Stuntman Mecca. I think that's why people look at it as his worst film, is because it feels like it drags, where in his other films the dialogue is connected to characters and things that happen throughout, and bigger things that happen through history, but
I mean, it was a cool movie. Out of all his films, though, like I just get the sense that he just went into this film with no expectations, no pressure. He just had fun just making a movie.
Yeah, he just got done doing Kill Bill.
He was exhausted.
He was just.
I mean, look at the break between Kill Bill and Inglourious Basterds. It's almost like a 7-year break.
Yeah,
because Kill Bill was wrapped, I think, in like 2002.
Okay.
And then he didn't release anything else until, I guess, 2007. So it's a pretty long break.
Yeah.
So that's Death Proof at number 11. Then let's move along to number 10, which is Kill Bill Volume 1. I mean, once again, that was a huge break. You get Jackie Brown, which comes out in Christmas of '97. And then Kill Bill Volume 1 doesn't come out until October of 2003. This is actually his shortest movie, actually. It's only like an hour and 49 minutes. What are your thoughts on Kill Bill Volume 1 looking back on it? Were you disappointed when you first saw it?
I loved it when I saw it twice in theaters. Yeah. I was crazy about Kill Bill Volume 1. But
it left you wanting more, though. Like, that's the thing I think everyone could agree with.
Right. I think one of the things over the film's lifetime is that when it ends, there's not as much of a sense of completion. You want more. You want more from it, because there's still so much that you don't know.
Volume 1 is the questions. Volume 2 is the answers, right? That was the marketing strategy.
That was their marketing strategy. And I think that, honestly, like for me, it would have. I didn't make a list for this video because I'm not as good at lists. My list changes every year.
Every video I do is a list.
I know
people are probably sick of it.
You're a list person, man, and I'm sure there are list people out there who enjoy that. But for me, Kill Bill Volume 1 is electric. It's just electrified, and it's fun. And it's certainly a genre movie that's playing around with you.
Right. Yeah. Well, we've said this in the Tarantino 20 review that it's him paying homage to the kung fu genre, which is pretty much on point. It's a very artsy movie. It's like a piece of art. Also, I think it's his best movie with music, about finding the right music for the right scene. Yeah. There's songs in this movie that were so tough to find. Like there was this Saliu song from Japan that they used for the Hattori Hanzo scene, and I thought it was so beautiful. But it's rare though. Like he jacked it from another movie, but it was just so rare. But it fits the scene so well that it was worth paying for, taking the risk to put it in there.
Yeah. So, there was another movie I watched when I was in college. If there's a real film buff watching this, maybe you'll know the name. I forget the name, but he actually took the concept of the hit list from I want to say it was a Chinese film that was made many decades ago.
Yeah.
But it was much more. It was just as brutal. Her parents, I think, basically the woman who ends up taking revenge, her mom ended up getting raped. And her parents got killed, and her mom was eventually killed, but she was born before her mom died. And so she, the rest of her life is dedicated to killing these people that killed her parents and raped her mom. And
so that was the inspiration for the whole...
It was very hard to imagine that Tarantino hadn't seen that film, because the way that they did it, with everything, it seemed very obvious.
Yeah, I mean, the analogy that I would use is like Eric Bischoff, NWO. Because he actually stole that idea from Japan.
Oh, he did?
He kind of just Americanized it. Maybe you could... I think that's what Tarantino does.
I don't think that Tarantino, I'm not giving him flack for it.
Yeah.
Kill Bill's an amazing movie. Different movies are adapted in different ways all the time, but I just think it's important for people to understand that, because that's what he does with a lot of his films. He's pulling from other cinematic influences,
and then it plays out in his vision. Basically.
Yeah, I love Kill Bill Volume.
Before I forget, there's one thing I wanted to point out. There's something that just leaked a couple weeks ago, or maybe a couple months ago, about Vivica A. Fox. Like, she was supposed to have a bigger role in it, but apparently, like, she didn't get along with Tarantino. Tarantino, like, was very demanding with this scene. Like, apparently they made them rehearse, and it was kind of like boot camp. He said it had to be a certain way, it had to be done right, and out of everyone that he's ever worked with, it seems like they didn't get along very, very well at all. And I guess that would kind of explain why they killed her off so fastly. A very, very small role.
Well, you have to remember they were all going to die.
Right. Yeah, but Vivica A. Fox is just kind of like a prelude to... Oren Ishii at the end of the movie. Oren Ishii is obviously the main boss, but Vivica A. Fox is kind of like she's like a little piece of the Foot Clan compared to her.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you just said main boss is funny, because Kill Bill Volume 1 is probably the first film that kind of feels like a video game. It's got like a video game concept to it, where she kind of levels up from and then in Kill Bill Volume 2 you get to watch how she leveled up, and how she grew in her abilities. So it kind of feels like a video game in that regard. As far as Vivica, I think there may be something to that. She got killed off pretty early on. It was kind of underwhelming when she does get killed in the beginning of the movie.
It's too easy.
Yeah. Right.
And then she kills Buck, who came here to fuck. I mean, she was in a coma for like 4 years, and she was having, they were actually making money having guys come in and screw her. That was crazy.
That was messed up. Yeah.
I mean, it just shows you how sick and twisted. Yeah, it just goes along that same theme, along with Pulp Fiction too. How it shows you how sick and twisted the world is too. So it does give you that, and then obviously she goes and gets the Hattori Hanzo sword from, I think it was Sonny Chiba, right, over in somewhere in Japan.
Yeah.
Can't remember exactly where.
Osaka, Japan.
Was it Osaka? Yeah.
I think so.
Dragon Gate style. Yeah. Let me try to think. And then, I want to talk about Oren Ishii. They really built her up quite well as very evil, because they showed her sadistic side when they brought up, if you mention her American heritage, she'll cut your head off. I thought that was really well done.
That's one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah.
I love that scene.
I guess that Japanese guy had a tough time accepting the fact that she was American.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, for I don't know, decades or centuries, or they had always had Japanese blood. Just it was a closed circuit of Japanese, and he looked at her, he called her something, a half Jap whore or something like that. And she's a killer. She killed.
She wasted no time. She just sprinted over and just cut off his head. Man.
That's right. Yeah, well, it was incredibly disrespectful and dishonoring her name, slandering her.
And you know what was really cool about this movie when they went back in time and told her story through like a comic book? That was really cool. Yeah, the music in that fit very well about how I think both of her parents were killed. Yeah. Then she became like an assassin for the Deadly Viper Squad.
Yeah, the origin, it almost felt like its own short film, the origin of Oren Ishii. Yeah, it was cool.
and then when Uma Thurman gets to the crazy 88s, I mean, that was just, there's just a lot of great visual stuff. Her with the little schoolgirl, Japanese schoolgirl, with that blade ball.
Go.
I think Tarantino said that was the best thing he had ever done, like visually.
And that whole, the whole thing?
But just particularly the girl.
The girl,
with the stabbing of the eyeballs and everything. That was, really brutal stuff.
Up. It was brutal, but it was beautiful. It was beautiful filmmaking.
She put a lot of work into it, too.
If you don't like Tarantino, just watch that whole House of Blue Leaves sequence, because just the way he filmed that and what he did, changing the music up the way he did, it was just so well orchestrated. And he had never done anything like that before as a director. So you have to give him a lot of credit for being able to step into those shoes and being able to direct all that. It was really, really impressive.
Yeah.
And I believe the same guy who coordinated and orchestrated the Matrix fighting was part of that. I don't know his name, but you have to give him a lot of credit too.
Well, I think people that were born in the 60s and 70s, they just have a better appreciation of the kung fu genre. Like, I think him and RZA, obviously RZA started the Wu-Tang Clan, was based off of the kung fu genre, so they had that connection, and RZA did work on the soundtrack too. So I think if you hadn't grown up in that time frame, you probably don't appreciate it as much. Maybe. So maybe that's one of the reasons with this movie right here, I put it low because it's kind of like his. You just don't get a lot of interaction between the characters here. There's just a lot of fighting, a lot of, just a lot of crazy stuff going on. But you don't really get those, moments of dialogue between the characters in the Kill Bill Volume 1. But like I say, it's a setup to Volume 2.
Exactly. Yeah. It's true. It's both two very different movies.
And the music had a big impact on culture, though. Like even in professional wrestling, think about how many people came down to the ring with Kill Bill songs in Ring of Honor. I think Paul London did. Homicide used the, what do you call it? The what was that sound effect? You know what sound effect I'm talking about?
I'm not going to imitate it for you now.
Yeah, I'm not saying to imitate it, but you know what I'm saying. Homicide used
whenever she saw someone she was going to do, whenever she saw one of the people on her.
You remember what that was called again? The name of that sound effect?
I remember the name of the song.
Yeah, even that do 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 do. Like all those songs were just huge after Kill Bill.
Ringtones, car commercials. Yeah, it actually did have a really big cultural.
But most of the music wasn't done for the movie, though. It was just stuff that was popular in Japan.
Some of it was just stuff that he heard elsewhere. From the 5, 6, 7, 8s.
Yeah.
That was a band that he just picked up and he said, "Here, let's try this." And that probably made them huge, the 5, 6, 7, 8s, and that was one of their songs, and that's been on car commercials and stuff. But a lot of that stuff has been everywhere.
It's probably one of my favorite soundtracks. It might be like top 2 or top 3 out of all his movies.
Same here. Yeah.
Okay, so number 9. Next up, we have this kind of fell off for me. I have Django Unchained. Mm-hmm. I think we said this when we saw the movie in the theaters. Like, I think it blew everybody away. Mm-hmm. I think it's the one Tarantino movie where it's either you like it or you don't. You don't have to watch it a million times to get it. I mean, what are you looking back on it? What really connected with you?
I still love it. For me, it's his biggest adventure movie. There's a great sense of adventure. It's his true spaghetti western. A lot of his other films have elements of spaghetti western. This one is like the true spaghetti western, and that's more homage to not Ennio Morricone, but Sergio Leone for the spaghetti westerns with Clint Eastwood. He even uses a lot of the camera close-ups.
Sergio Leone worked with Clint Eastwood?
Yeah, the spaghetti westerns, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, For a Few Dollars More, A Fistful of Dollars. Yeah. So this one has the most of that flavor and that sense of adventure. It almost plays like a comedy, despite the fact that there are some horrid things that happen in it. And the biggest thing that's one of the best things about Tarantino that other filmmakers admire, especially a guy like Kevin Smith, is his transitions and his beats. And what I mean by that is being able to transition, especially in Django. One thing I like about Django the most, he's able to transition from comedy to almost I would call horror and like, you know, shock value like on a dime. He's the best at that. Some of Django Unchained actually feels like it was produced by Judd Apatow. Like it has that super bad, I love you man sort of lightness to it. And then out of nowhere on a dime, it gets really serious.
And I think Leonardo DiCaprio's character that's what it goes from high to low.
Yeah.
So
right. Yeah. And I you know, it's crazy for me to say that I like that character. I should hate the character.
It's you're right though. It has moments of just being very funny and laid back.
Yeah, I mean when he says, you know.
But then it's like the most racist guy in the world, though.
As talented as they are in the kitchen, from time to time, adult supervision is required. I'm like, I can't help but laugh at that. You know, it's horrible. I mean, he's a horrible human being. But I can't help but laugh.
But then when he finds out that he got hustled, he just got so angry and embarrassed.
Sons of bitches. I love it. He's electric.
There was even a point in the movie where they I think it was Samuel L. Jackson and Jamie Foxx. They told him, "Listen, you gotta be more hateful because you're holding back." They felt like he was holding back.
So, that's a great story. Yeah, it really is.
But I'll tell you why I have it kind of low though. And there's a rapper named Royce the 5'9". He's actually Eminem's friend. Him and Eminem did an album together called Bad Meets Evil. Okay, well he actually had a line in one of his albums this year. He said, "Yeah, it's all played out just like slave movies." And then I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, I think after Django Unchained, I think Hollywood kind of abused the slave movies. Mm-hmm. I think we've seen just a lot of them, and I just think, you know, I just don't think the movies has aged that well. I don't know. And when you think about it, like, I don't know if this is 100% on the money, but it just seems like the racial divide in our country. I'm not saying it's a direct correlation, but if you notice, the racial divide in our country has gotten even more since the movie. Like, if you look at all the racial things that's happened since Django Unchained, it's been a lot, you know, from Trayvon Martin to, you know, the Eric Garner thing in Staten Island with him getting choked out. It's just been so much since then. I mean, I think maybe the younger generation, maybe it affected them mentally because they weren't aware that it was really that serious. Yeah. You know, maybe that had a lot to do with it.
You mean in the 1800s?
Yeah, I'm just saying maybe there's just a lot of, you know, younger black kids that really weren't aware that it was really that, you know, it got to the extent that it did with the dog fighting and all that stuff. Right.
There were, I mean, Mississippi was probably the worst. And it was bad everywhere, but Mississippi was really more like the Holocaust, and that's the way Tarantino portrays Mississippi. The first shot, you know, where you see the slaves being herded like cattle, you know, through the streets. That is, you know, basically, I don't think people were necessarily ready to see that. And one of the things that people didn't like, especially, you know, one thing Spike Lee didn't like about it, was that, like I said, being able to transition from comedy to, holy shit, this is horrifying, is one of those things that some people just didn't like. And I've talked to a lot of people who didn't like Django Unchained. The reason I like it is because he got people to laugh at something. They're not laughing at slavery, and they're not laughing at the horrors that happened in American slavery.
Right.
But
they're laughing at the mentality of the people behind it.
Exactly. They're laughing at the absurdity, but they're also getting a chance to be in a room together and actually, you know, acknowledge, hey, this happened. You know, it's really, really fucked up.
Well, the KKK scene was, they were pretty much making fun of the Ku Klux Klan.
They were just ripping it. Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I'll always look back very fondly on I saw it twice in theaters, and yes, it was very awkward.
It was a great experience.
It was great because some people were laughing and some people were not, and it was and you could just see on their faces that they were not comfortable with some of the laughter, but it was like, this is important. Filmmakers need to do this more.
Well, it has a lot in common with Inglourious Basterds. This was kind of like the you know, blacks really getting their turn and seeing it play out with them coming out on top. You know, with Jamie Foxx being the superhero.
Yeah. Right, exactly. That was important. I think that was important, and that was important for the black community, and more so than ever, I think it's important for the black community to have those black stars in Hollywood projected on the screen, because a lot of us are living with these screens in front of our faces.
Yeah.
And for a long time, the black youth didn't really have a lot of black heroes.
Yeah.
And so we're getting more and more of that, you know. And black women don't have a lot of black women heroes that are being projected, you know, for them to look up to. And that's, you know,
but I would say that the most important character of the movie, and the one that's the heart of the movie, which ties everything together, I think is Christoph Waltz, because he's the one that kind of drew the line between good and evil.
Well,
he basically sacrificed his life because he had that much hatred for Candyland or Mr. Candy, DiCaprio's character.
He had disdain for slavery, despite
he couldn't get that image of the dog feeding out of his head, and he couldn't help it any longer.
He had honor,
yeah,
and there was no honor in what he was seeing Americans do with slavery, and he had honor and respect, despite the fact that he killed crooks for cash as a bounty hunter. The one thing that's important to remember about Christoph Waltz's character, his name was King Schultz, was that he was German. And I know Inglourious Basterds is next on your list, and Inglourious Basterds, I think a lot of people with a war movie that takes place during World War II, everybody knows who the bad guys are, the Germans.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And in this one, it's ironic that the guy who walks that line, as you say, you know, between good and evil, is a German who's doing the honorable thing, you know. And who's the enemy in Django Unchained? We're the enemy. We're the enemy. It's you know, it's America who is the enemy in Django Unchained, you know. So I think it doesn't sit well, you know, with some people as much as Inglourious Basterds, but. I'll always love Django. I don't think it's like I said, you know, Django's a lot of fun, and it's a revenge. Ultimately, it's another revenge movie. It's basically a fairy tale where Django, you know, as the knight, saves his princess from the evil Calvin Candy, and that's really all it is, you know. But then there's all this political, social kind of stuff thrown in your face around that, you know.
All right, so move on to Inglourious Basterds. This is actually moving up your list. Do you want to explain why? And I know other people that have it as their favorite as well. What made it so important to you?
I just think that there's so much good stuff in Inglourious Basterds. There's no way to put it in one video. There's so many, or in like 5 minutes. There's so many good scenes. The cinematography is, I think, the best that I've seen from Tarantino. The characters are so well written. Remember, he was working on these characters for years and years. He has a lot of subtext.
Well, he was talking about the war movies since the mid-90s.
Yeah, he was going to do a whole trilogy, and then he condensed it down into what I consider to be one really great film, which my favorite directors will do. Instead of having 3 good movies, have one great movie. Yeah. And I think, for me, that's what he did. And I think that, you know, a lot of people say, for me, Christoph Waltz's character in Inglourious Basterds, Hans Landa, is one of my favorite characters. There's just so much good dialogue. I actually love the subtitles. I forget that I'm watching a movie that's like 70% subtitled. Yeah. And once again, you know, this Django kind of continued. I feel like Django and Inglourious Basterds belong together because transitions, going from these very comedic moments to these very serious moments. Right, There's a lot of like comedy in Inglourious Basterds, and then it shifts very quickly, and it gets very intense. The scene in the pub, there's a 27-minute scene. If you've never seen this film, 27-minute scene in the pub, it is the most intense I think I've ever seen a Tarantino film get. The tension that the actors hold in that scene is so good. Yeah. It's just one of my favorites.
Could you explain that scene?
Sure. It is the American and Jewish-born bastards are on a project called Operation Kino, with a character played by Michael Fassbender, who is a British soldier going in basically as spies, and they go into this underground tavern in Paris. I believe it's Paris. Forgive me. It might be a different city in France. And they're meeting an actress, a German actress named Bridget von Hammersmark, who is actually a spy for the British government. She's a German actress who's actually betraying her country. Right. She's betraying Germany. And they meet there to discuss Operation Kino. To discuss the bombing of the movie theater that we get at the end of the film. Right. Spoiler alert. You should put a spoiler alert on there, brother. But they basically talk about that. They're there to talk about that plan. While they're there, someone, and this is all I'll say about the scene because I want to ruin it, one of the drunken German soldiers hears something very peculiar about Michael Fassbender's accent, and he asks him about it. And then there's another higher ranked German officer behind the wall drinking a beer. Right. He hears the commotion about the accent. He walks out. And he goes over to their table and he says, and the room is silent when he walks out, and he says, "I too hear something peculiar in your accent. May I join your table?" And then I'm just going to let it go from there. It's very intense. It's very fun. It's my
that's kind of like the I shot Marvin in the face moment of the movie.
Yeah, I guess so. Much more drawn out. More drawn out, obviously.
That's more intricate. Yep. Well, the thing that I mean, it's just tough for me. Maybe because I'm not Jewish. Maybe because I don't have ancestors that were in the Holocaust. I just can't connect to it probably as much as other people could have. And the subtitles for me too. It's the type of movie where you have to kind of be on your P's and Q's and pay attention to it. You do have to. It's not like you could just like fall asleep to it.
No, you have to really give it the full attention.
Yeah.
But one thing for people to keep in mind with starting with Kill Bill Volume 1 and going all the way through, I think Django, Tarantino has had, elements of revenge in all these films.
Right.
And even in this one, he has an element of revenge with Shoshana's character taking
right, the girl,
revenge.
the projectionist, yeah.
The projectionist, the movie theater. She owns the movie theater.
Yeah, I thought she was good. That was probably my favorite part of the movie, was just her character.
Yeah.
Because she was very humble and very, very smart, but at the same time, she knew what she was doing, like the whole film.
Yeah. And she's beautiful. Beautiful woman. Yeah.
And the whole thing about the what type of film would burn faster. What they used. I can't remember the exact name of the film.
Nitrate.
Nitrate burns like 10 times faster than regular film. Mm-hmm. So that was cool. Trying to think, but really, Christoph Waltz really stole the show. Mm-hmm. I just felt like the opening scene with him and the Frenchman was really, you could just feel the tension. And it was just kind of like the return of Tarantino of just like letting the dialogue sink in.
Exactly.
It had just been a while since we've seen that.
That's a good point.
That's probably my favorite scene in the movie, even though it's really doesn't have a great payoff right away. But
that was beautiful filmmaking. And once again, Inglourious Basterds, once again, transitions, but the best thing about Inglourious was tension. The way they held tension between the characters was he
was crying. He made him cry.
Yeah.
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 The Frenchman, yeah.
Yeah, that was really good. He was a good actor, too.
Well, was the projectionist in the basement in that scene?
Yes. Shoshana was younger, and she was in the basement.
She was younger, yeah.
Let me point something else out, because I know some people don't like the dialogue being in subtitles.
But they transitioned to English.
They used, exactly, in that scene, they use it as a way to build tension. When they speak in English, the tension rises.
Yeah.
And but they use it so that the people underneath the floorboards can't understand what they're saying, and then he switches back to French, and everything's all nice and peachy, and then here come the soldiers in with their machine guns, and it's very, very scary.
Like, even though it's not my favorite Tarantino movie, I could see why he's probably the most proud of this movie, because I think it's that one movie where, you know, our grandfather will probably appreciate, you know, and I just think that there's so many different nationalities and so many different heritages that could appreciate this more than, you know, Pulp Fiction. You know, Pulp Fiction is kind of like just making a movie for your friends, some would say.
Yeah, I feel that. Sure. Very different film. Very different when you get to that on your list. Very different era of Tarantino filmmaking. Yeah, you know, he really went in a different direction in his style.
Yeah, I mean, it was a way for him to kind of show off how well rounded he was as far as, you know, his filmmaking and his you know, just the kind of movies he grew up watching. You know, it wasn't just American movies. He grew up watching every type of movie.
Yeah, I know. He's a real student.
Yeah,
he truly is, and I think that's part of what he's exercising in his films since even Kill Bill Volume 1 is, look at all the places my mind has gone, and I'm going to take all this stuff and throw it in a pot and give it to you in a way that's going to work. You know, I think that's what he does. Yeah. That's one of the things he does best.
Okay, so at number 7, I have Dusk Till Dawn. And you know, this wasn't included on the Tarantino 20 set. You know, obviously it's more of a Robert Rodriguez directed movie, but Tarantino did write the screenplay. Right. He asked John Travolta to be in the movie. So obviously he was very passionate about the idea of Dusk Till Dawn. Right. The first half of the movie feels like a Tarantino movie. The second half feels like a Robert Rodriguez movie. I think the first half is great. I think some of the scenes with Harvey Keitel. First of all, Harvey Keitel was great because I didn't realize that was him until years later. Right. The interaction between him and Juliette Lewis, I thought, was great in the movie. Right. To me, this is really Tarantino's defining moment as an actor, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a really good point. He's great in it. He's so ridiculously creepy and funny with Juliette Lewis. And she's great in this film. I actually think Juliette, she doesn't get enough credit. She's really good in this.
What did Brittany say? She was like stupid pretty? I thought that was kind of...
Because she looks, you know, like she's got that Midwest or Southern type of look to her. Yeah. You know, nothing against anybody from the South, but, you know, there's, you know... Oh God, sorry.
No, I like the the scene in the movie. No, the one scene in the movie where he's daydreaming about her asking him to eat her pussy out. I thought that was pretty funny.
That was the funniest thing I've ever seen. So creepy.
I mean, it kind of Tarantino plays like a creep loner. He's basically a rapist.
He's a psycho killer. Yeah, these are not characters we're going to look up to.
And you know what's funny about Clooney? Clooney is bad just like him, but he's so much more mature, and he has like kind of a coolness and a very, very responsible compared to Tarantino's character.
That's one of the greatest things about those characters. And I think they're good characters. I don't think the film has a lot of depth beyond the movie house or the room you're watching it in, but what I love the conflict between George Clooney and Harvey Keitel's character, and the conflict between Clooney and his brother, played by Tarantino. With his conflict with his brother is that George Clooney is a professional crook, criminal, and killer. He kills because he has to. Right. He doesn't kill because he wants to. Right. And that's the big conflict.
He's very businesslike compared to Tarantino. Tarantino's very childlike.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
He's very easily distracted.
Yeah. Well, he's psychotic.
He's psychotic, and you kind of feel like he's a loner too. You know.
George Clooney treats his criminal work almost like a soldier would treat, going to war. In a sense, although there's just a lot less honor behind it.
And Juliette Lewis, like by the end of the movie, like she ended up really liking him. Yeah, like, to the point where you'd think they'd be sexual partners.
Right, exactly. She was going to go with, because
there was only two that survived.
Her entire family was gone.
Was killed, yeah.
Yeah.
And it is kind of like Lawrence Bender Tarantino's producer. He was more of he came from like the slasher film genre, and Tarantino was always a big fan of the slasher film genre. Then Robert Rodriguez, and this was kind of Tarantino being able to kind of fulfill his slasher film type of.
I can see that. Yeah, sure.
I mean, it really is like more of a Rodriguez movie. It really. I mean, it's an acquired taste. I mean, a lot of people kind of get turned off by the vampire thing. John Travolta, he asked John Travolta to be in the movie, and he said, "Yeah, there's nothing wrong with Dusk to Dawn. I'm just not into the whole vampire thing."
It was really funny. Yeah, no, I love that John Travolta said that, because this is what Tarantino wanted John Travolta to do instead of Pulp Fiction, and it's really, really funny that Travolta said that, and I think he's right. I think that would have been bad casting.
Yeah, it just wasn't right.
But it's a fun movie, and it's a
I to be honest, I kind of turn it off after the Salma Hayek dance.
Yeah.
It just, I mean, it's just, the vampire part of the movie is just not something I could rewatch.
I drink beer with every Tarantino movie I watch, because I just get in such a good mood when I watch his films. This is the one where I would recommend drink a little bit more, because, same thing with Death Proof. Drink a little bit more, because they're not great films. But let me tell you something about Robert Rodriguez. Robert Rodriguez doesn't make any, excuses for his style of filmmaking.
Yeah.
And I think that this is just a fun movie. It's just a
it is. It's a great movie. It has its own identity. They made a whole bunch of sequels to it. To me, this is like the El Rey movie. This is the Robert Rodriguez movie that defines his career. It is,
Yeah, I don't know if we needed Dusk Till Dawn 2 and 3 and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's like the Sandlot. Yeah. They made like 4 Sandlots, right? But there's only one Dusk Till Dawn. There's only one Sandlot. It's the same thing. But like I said, I think the first half of the movie, the characters, Tarantino and George Clooney, Harvey Keitel, the whole dynamic with them in the RV trying to get across the border into Mexico without, getting pulled out by Border Patrol.
Cheech Marin plays 3 different characters. Yeah. So that's pretty cool.
He played the Border Patrol cop, and then he played the pussy guy.
Pussy lover.
And I always say that, right? Yeah. All right, so that's Dusk Till Dawn at number 7. Number 6, we have True Romance with Christian Slater, James Gandolfini. The thing is, like, if you look at the cast of True Romance, it really is like an all-star cast, from Michael Rappaport to Brad Pitt. The list goes on and on. Gary Oldman.
Can't go wrong.
You can't name enough superstars in this cast. This might be one of the best casts ever. But it wasn't directed by Tarantino. Tarantino wrote it. But when you listen to the commentary, I never really appreciated this. This is really like the movie to watch if you want to see Tarantino live out his fantasy. He kind of started off as kind of like a nerdy kid that worked in a comic book store, but then he eventually got to live out his fantasy.
Right.
Like a real, this is really what he wanted. If you watch this movie.
In fact, I think this is one of the more autobiographical films from Tarantino, in terms of what a kid experiences when he goes out to Hollywood, or he goes into the entertainment business and tries to get made. Obviously, it's not about that. But, the drugs, I feel like the suitcase of drugs that Christian Slater finds kind of symbolizes that, here's this opportunity. He falls in love with a woman, he goes out to California, and and there's all these crazy people that they meet. Once again, and it's funny, it's so funny because, I think about the Tarantino pantheon, and there are kind of subtle ways that the movies are linked together. The same thing I said about Django Unchained, kind of feeling like had that fairy tale. They even have the fairy tale in the movie, the German fairy tale. This movie feels like a fairy tale. True Romance. It feels like, but instead of goblins and monsters, you have crooked cops, and you have drug dealers and pimps and mafia men. So it's it's a crime drama fairy tale, and that's the way. That's how it breaks down in my mind, and I love it. I love the score by Hans Zimmer. I love the score. And one thing I have to say, and this is for any of the women who are watching this, because I've met some women Tarantino fans, who are really into film. I think Patricia Arquette's role in this, it could have come off as so one-dimensional, because she's basically every guy's wet dream. She's beautiful, is blonde hair, blue-eyed. She's a call girl in the beginning of the movie, and then Christian Slater, who's a comic book geek, falls in love with her. Of course, you know, Tarantino had to be. That's pretty autobiographical because he's a film geek.
He's a film
geek.
Yep.
She's like every guy's wet dream, but she becomes so much more than that in that scene with James Gandolfini. When James Gandolfini, they fight. They fight, you know, and it's amazing.
It's an amazing story because when you think about how a prostitute views the guys that she's having sex with, it's strictly business. Like you think most of the time she don't give a shit about their character, but with this movie right here, it just seems like she just saw something in him that, you know, is normally not there most of the time. So,
right, yeah, it's kind of cool. It's kind of wonderful. They were both,
and it seemed like Christian Slater. He transformed. His character transforms by the minute as soon as as soon as he realizes that this girl is more than a prostitute.
Well, there are a lot of people out there.
He becomes more hungry.
That really pulls on my heartstrings because I think there are a lot of people out there who really relate to Clarence in Alabama.
Right.
There are these two kids who it makes me want to cry. Like there are a lot of people out there who can really relate to these kids because both of them Alabama must have come from a broken family because she must have escaped. And Clarence has his dad, but he barely sees him. So they're both these youths who are sort of transplanted, you know, into the world, and they don't really have a foothold on anything really solid. And here they found each other. Right. And that's the true romance about it. And I think there are a lot of people out there, despite the fact that this movie might just come off as this crime drama shoot 'em up, I think people really relate to those characters. And
and so did the director, where he had to change the script.
Right. Yeah. Tony Scott, and you know, it's always important to talk about that. You know, that's the thing.
He said, "I want these kids to succeed. This is my movie. I want these kids to succeed."
Yeah.
And then, you know,
I'm happy.
Tarantino was convinced, but he really wasn't.
I know.
But you know, if Tarantino directed this movie, I think Tony Scott did a great job, and I agree with the score. I think it fit the early '90s quite well. But I in the back of my mind, I always want Tarantino to kind of. No, I think it'd be cool to see his version of the movie. Obviously, it'd be a lot darker, it'd be a lot different, but you know, I'd like to see it play out the way you want it.
It would be really interesting. You know, that'd be a good film project. I don't think Tarantino.
He doesn't want to do it though.
But if Tarantino,
in honor of because Tony Scott's dead, that's probably won't never do it now.
Yeah. Unless they hired like a film student that Tarantino could hand pick and say, we're gonna have you reshoot the end, and then we're gonna you know, we'll split, because Tarantino's version would have been chopped up like Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs. It would have been
non-linear. Yeah,
it would have been non-linear.
Right. He was really on a non-linear kick in the early '90s. So.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, man, the movie's really aged well on me. There's just a lot of great actors that play very different characters, from Brad Pitt being the stoner guy to Michael Rappaport being basically just playing himself, the big kid. Trying to think of what else. James Gandolfini. To me, the seeds were planted for The Sopranos. Going back to this movie here.
I was going to say the same thing.
You got to say that too. Yeah, man, it's just great. It's very funny too. Yeah. A lot of the cocaine. You know, when the guy has he's getting a blowjob, and then the cocaine goes all over his face when the cop stops him.
I forget his name, but I was really
but there's just a lot of and then Gary Oldman too. You don't really recognize him.
He plays a white pimp who thinks he's black.
Yeah.
And everybody I tell that to, because there are people who love Gary Oldman. I just won an Oscar. Yeah. You know, a lot of people haven't seen this movie. He plays a white pimp who thinks he's black. It's amazing. You have to see it.
No, we're talking about an actor who really transforms himself where you don't even recognize. I didn't even recognize him.
It's so good.
Dexter, he plays Dexter. He plays the main drug dealer.
Yeah. And everybody's going to expect us to talk about, we won't talk too much about Dennis Hopper.
Dennis Hopper is Christian Slater. And I want to say this about Christian Slater before I forget. I think this is his best. From what I've seen, I think this is his best movie.
Without a doubt.
And you could tell, the other movie I remember him in was Heathers. Uh-huh. And around the late 80s, early 80s, he seemed like a Jack Nicholson wannabe. greetings and salutations. He always had that Jack Nicholson type of accent. But by this movie, I totally forgot about it. I didn't pick it up for 1 second that, you know, this is the guy trying to be like Jack, because he's a big Jack Nicholson fan. He actually did a whole play in tribute to Jack Nicholson. So, but yeah. We want to talk about the Sicilian scene. Dennis Hopper is Christian Slater's dad, or father. Sure. And Christopher Walken plays the Sicilian mob, the guy that was in charge of all the drugs, right?
Right.
And I guess Dennis Hopper knew he was going to die, so he just told him the Sicilians
story. Were spawned by blacks, by the Moors, because the Moors
conquered Sicily.
Conquered Sicily and raped Sicilian women, and so that he doesn't use the word blacks, he uses another word, but I'm not going to, of course, I don't want to say it, but it is it's just a really good scene.
Great scene. Yeah.
It's a really...
Tarantino said that the scene's almost too good, that it was actually tough. He thinks it was actually tough to keep going with the movie, because any other movie wouldn't have survived a scene that good.
Yeah, that's appropriate. I personally, it's not my favorite scene. My favorite scene is between Patricia Arquette and James Gandolfini. Okay, but yeah. I can see why this is the most recognized scene between Walken and Hopper, when he insinuates that Sicilians were... And going back to tension in Inglourious Basterds, the tension and differences, there's so much tension between these two. Because you know that he knows he's going to die, and he knows, and Walken knows that he's going to kill him. You know, it's just a matter of time, and Hopper decides, and so there's all this love for his son rolled up in this story of him insulting the guy who's going to kill him, basically saying, "I love my son, and I'm not gonna fucking give him up." Yeah. And it's and there's there's some humor in it. There's some really dark humor to it, and then of course even grander. Yeah. Of course, and there's a lot of this in Tarantino films. You can't not talk about this or comment on this. Obviously, using the N-word in this scene has these reverberations for if you're white or black or whatever, hearing these men using it in such a way. I think that I really do believe that Tarantino in his writing wants to rub it in people's faces. He wants to rub once again these types of prejudice views, these types of racist views people's faces.
Yeah, and this was actually told to him by a friend of his mother. Oh, and, really? He says it in the commentary track. Yeah. So it's one of those things where he took something that happened to him, a story that was told him in real life, and was able to fit into his script. Mm-hmm. So he took note of it, and it was able to work very effectively. And Christopher Walken too, for someone that's not Sicilian, I thought he was great. Because his reactions and just his mannerisms to what Dennis Hopper was telling him was like right on the money. Oh! Yeah. Hey. And
beautiful.
He said, what do you say about Walken? He said he memorized every single word in the script, word for word, and didn't screw it up a second. Wow. So
holy moly. That's a great actor right there. A great actor who hasn't always been in some of the great
Walken was, I think that was like, I think he found his stride in doing that, just having these cameos that would just be involved in these really, really intricate scenes. They weren't long, but they like this this scene and then the Pulp Fiction scene. Uh-huh. It was really like that kind of bridge that kind of kept the movie going.
He just comes in and steals the show.
Steals the show, yeah. So that's True Romance, man. That's a number 6. Number 5, we have Kill Bill Volume 2, one of your favorites. Why is it one of your favorites? And how is it a progression to Kill Bill Volume 1?
There's so many things about Kill Bill Volume 2 that I really, really like. It's so hard to pinpoint it. The cinematography, I think up until this point, Kill Bill Volume 1 had some really beautiful things. Volume 2 is just so beautiful to me. I love the cinematography in it, and I love the way that Tarantino uses the camera. The music is so good. And in this one, there's this... We find out through the course of this movie, and then of course, especially by the very end, that this is a romance. This is a romance movie. And people hearing this are going to think, what the hell are you talking about? This is a romance movie that was, that just that came in the form of a revenge movie. It's a romance story that has revenge, and it really that just really hit me. So I definitely have a lot of personal, my heartstrings really get pulled when I really think about the deepness of this film, and I think that it used to be my number one. It's kind of fallen off. I don't really know where I'd put it now, but I love the characters. I think the one that he's so good, Tarantino is, at writing these characters like Bud, played by Michael Madsen, who are just, they had their glory days, and now they're just they're down and they're out, and they're trying to live life, living life after having been an assassin. Imagine what would it be like? That's Bud's character. What would life be like if you had to live after you were an assassin? And that relates to, I think I see my father in that, and I see, not my father wasn't an assassin, but I see my father, I see my mother, I see other people that I've worked with, students that I used to work with students. I see myself being like that character, having given his life to something, and then when that life was over, what your new life was, and it wasn't glamorous, and it wasn't pretty or beautiful, and so there's a lot of humility in that character, and there's just something wonderful about that. And
so Michael Madsen's character really connected with you.
Yeah, he really did. He was really the core.
Well, I mean, you kind of see the Michael Madsen himself. He looked like he aged a million years between Reservoir Dogs and Kill Bill, and it was only 10 years. So.
Yeah,
that's what I noticed about it. But no, I agree. You kind of feel a little bit sorry for him. But the guy at his job was basically the guy at the bar was talking down to him even before the movie really got going. So you kind of sympathize with him a little bit.
Well, and this,
but he does. He's one of the few people that actually, beat Uma Thurman to the punch.
Yeah.
In Kill Bill.
Strangely, yes. Ironically, because he doesn't try to
He put her in her biggest predicament.
Right, because he treated her like a spider treats a fly. He just sat in his trailer and waited for her to come around.
Yeah.
He didn't grab a samurai sword. He didn't run out yelling and screaming. He would have gotten his ass kicked if he did that. He just waited until she showed up, and then boom, because he wasn't going to go anywhere. He wasn't going to leave. He knew she was coming. And so that's why he may be down and out. He might be mopping up, shit on the bathroom of a strip club, but he's still a very smart killer. And so that's a very compelling character. And one thing that I think that we need to remember about, Tarantino's films is depth of character. When he shoots Uma Thurman, he spits tobacco in her face. We just spent the last half hour getting to know and almost like Bud, and now he's just absolutely defaming and almost killing our hero and putting her into the ground. And so, once again going back to transitions, Tarantino is a master at transitioning and saying, yes, you can like my character. He's also going to kill the person that you're supposed to be rooting for. And the beautiful thing as you watch this film, as you go along, is you realize how human all these characters are. Uma Thurman, for example, we find out as time goes on, there's a lot that we don't really feel like we should really like about her.
Right.
When she has the conversation with Bill and she admits she's a killer. And so as an audience, we kind of have to sit there and ask, why are we so invested in her if she's no better than anybody else that she's killing? Because it's true. Right. It's true.
Yeah, she's the one that cheated on Bill, right?
She left him, and it was for the sake of her child. It was for the sake, of course. But that whole conversation between her and Bill and that conflict was just a beautiful, beautiful thing. Because it's not just about the child. It's not just about her leaving. It's about him saying, "This is our life. This is what we chose, and there's no leaving it. You can't leave it." And she was trying to leave it at all costs. It was the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object. So I just love it. And Bill, I just love the way when we finally get to see Bill. In the first one, we don't see him, and we think he's kind of like the villain at the end of an Inspector Gadget. You know, that's all we really get from him. He's very one-dimensional. In this one, he's a human being. He's a father. He's a father with a broken heart.
Right.
And he, you know, he's a good father, but he's a horrible man. He's a horrible, you know, killing machine. It just blows my mind.
Wait, I mean, there's a lot of great things to love about the movie. I like the whole thing with Pai Mei, and then you see Uma Thurman punching her way out of the coffin. I thought that was really good stuff. The revenge on Ellie Driver with her taking the eye out and leaving her blind. I thought that was great revenge. Ellie Driver turning on Michael Madsen with the snake in the $1 million for the Hanzo sword. I thought that was really, really good stuff. The music was great. I think the scene where Uma's kind of taking it all in, that she finally got her child back, or her daughter back, and the music as that's playing. They transition away from the Kung Fu movie to the music. Mm-hmm. I always start crying during that music, so that always gets me about the movie.
Really?
The one thing I don't like, though, is, you know, there's a reason why David Carradine wasn't supposed to play Bill.
Why is that?
I don't know. It's just the Uma Thurman Bill thing. It's just too the discrepancy in age. Just kind of,
it was too much.
It was just a little bit too much for me. I'm like, why is she married to this guy that's approaching 70 and she's like 30?
There are women who do that in our culture all the time. Actually, you know, that happens. I don't know. I think that is a little bit. That's a pretty big age.
It was supposed to be what's his name from Bulworth.
He Bugsy. He wasn't that much younger.
But he couldn't get it. The Tarantino kept saying, "Do it like David Carradine, Kung Fu." What was his name again?
Yeah,
Warren Beatty.
Warren Beatty. Yeah, I think Warren Beatty was probably around the same age.
Yeah, and then Warren Beatty just said, "Well, why don't you just get David Carradine?" He's like, "All right, I will."
Yeah, and that was the right move.
Yeah,
that was definitely the right
move. What do you think of the ending with the Pai Mei teaching her the four-finger stroke of death?
So what was so cool about that, you know, was that we never see Pai Mei teach her how to do the what is it? I'm about to say 5-finger death.
Well, didn't Ellie Driver
do that's a band. 5-point. I can't remember what it's called. Ellie Driver. No. Ellie Driver just picked out Pai Mei's eye.
Oh, yeah, that's
no. Pai Mei picked out Ellie Driver.
Poked out her eye. Yeah.
Ellie Driver just
and then she poisoned him. She poisoned him. Okay.
Yeah, but that was just what was cool about that. I don't think that's an amazing thing to necessarily analyze or discuss. It was just an interesting way for Tarantino to introduce this thing in dialogue, and then at the very end we see it happen. The only point of that is to show the greatness of the bride, the greatness of Uma Thurman's character, in that even she's the only student. I think we're supposed to assume she's the only student that Pai Mei ever taught the 5-point exploding heart technique. That's what it's called.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
She was the only one that learned it. Yeah.
I think that's what we're supposed to take away. And that's why when he looks at her and says, Pai Mei taught you the 5-point heart exploding technique, then you know, she's like, of course he did, you know. He didn't teach that to Elle Driver.
Right,
he doesn't just teach that to everybody.
To anybody, yeah.
He teaches it only to the supreme people.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, overall, it's a great revenge movie. You could also see Tarantino a little bit experiment with westerns, a little bit. There's a little bit of western stuff with her getting out of the coffin. Some of the music in that scene is very western-like. But you know, the Kill. But I will say this: I think Kill Bill Volume 2 is a better movie. But it seems to me like when you look back on Kill Bill, you kind of think of the Crazy 88s in Volume 1 over Kill Bill 2.
And that's a really good point, dude. You make a really good point. When people think Kill Bill, they think of what they saw in Kill Bill Volume 1.
Yeah.
And even the music, we talked about the music. The music from Kill Bill Volume 1 was more heard, more used.
Yeah, it had more of an impact. Yeah.
I almost felt like Kill Bill Volume 2, it almost felt like, I don't know if he did this intentionally, but I felt like he made it for the people who are going to really stick around And because
I think Kill Bill 1 was more of a mainstream success.
I think it was. Like. Yeah, I think it was, and I think it felt that way. Volume 2 felt more like this is for the people who really want to know who these characters are.
Right.
And the people
that was more for the Tarantino fan base. Yeah.
I feel like it was. It felt more like the Tarantino film we were used to at the time.
All right, cool. So let's move on to number 4. We have The Hateful Eight. It's not even 3 years old yet. What do you think of The Hateful Eight looking back on it? We actually did a review of it. I think Miramax took it down.
Well, what's the thing that you tell me? Because this is the one that I'm still figuring out what I like, love, and dislike about Hateful Eight. What do you like the most about Hateful Eight?
I like the fact that all the characters are old. I think that's what I like about it. I think with Hateful Eight, it was kind of a return to just kind of letting things sink in and letting the characters just kind of sit back, drink coffee, reminisce. A lot of tension between the characters in the beginning when they're trying to get to the haberdashery. I like that. The poison coffee storyline. I thought that was cool.
That was really cool.
Just so many things. And Kevin brought this up to me because he was kind of taken aback by the racism at first, but then he said it hit him. They're the Hateful Eight. They're hateful for a reason.
Right.
So that I just think there's some good moments of dialogue. I'm still not crazy about the ending, but over time, there's a lot of dialogue and there's a lot of clues as to why the ending does work. But
I personally so I really love I love what you said about the coffee and the use of. Okay, so here's the thing. One thing I didn't mention yet. I think starting with Inglourious Basterds, I think all throughout his career, Tarantino has taken some political jabs in his dialogue and his characters. I think starting with Inglourious Basterds, they became more like overhand rights. They became like just punches to the face. And in Django Unchained, it was just like a kick. In Django Unchained, it was a kick to the balls. This was just another really swift kick in the pants and basically rubbing people's faces in the dichotomy and the dynamic of American racism and American, especially at the time after the Civil War, the way our country was, and he uses these characters and their political agendas, and he shows that's my favorite thing about the film.
Right.
The character played by Walton Goggins, his name is
Sheriff of Rockwood.
The Sheriff of Red Rock.
Red Rock, okay.
Rockwood. Red Rock.
Red Rock, my bad.
Yeah, Chris Maddox. It's not supposed to be your favorite character. I don't think you're supposed to love this character, but I actually love the character in the sense that the way he's written, basically the way he's written, Tarantino, helps him rationalize what he's saying. We see him try to rationalize what he's saying about his racist views and what he grew up with in the South. And then you get to hear him debate that in the wagon with Sam Jackson, a Union soldier, and Kurt Russell, a Union sympathizing bounty hunter. And so it really is, especially the other element that I love most about Hateful Eight is the Lincoln letter that Samuel Jackson holds with him, and the whole idea that he says, this letter is what got me on this wagon. This letter made white people a lot less scared of me and a lot less, likely to want to shoot me down, basically. This letter was the closest thing for me to be able to get to being a friend with a lot of people. And then you come to find out, spoiler alert, that the letter indeed was fabricated and it wasn't an authentic Lincoln letter. But it's so sad, and I know you mentioned the ending when they hang Domergue. So brutal. It's one of those things where, yes, it's brutal, but when Chris Maddox reads the Lincoln letter And it brings a tear to my eye every time because it's...
But what does the Lincoln letter have to do with the hanging?
It doesn't really
have much to do with it.
It doesn't have anything to do with the hanging.
Well, you sound like you're about to tie it in.
It's not so much with hanging, but it has to do... This movie is a lot about these two forces, a Confederate soldier and a Union soldier, unifying in the end to place judgment on the most hateful bitch they've ever met in their lives.
Yeah.
And to me, that really resonates not only, not so much, somewhat personally, but also with what's going on in our country and what has been going on in our country for a long time.
Right.
And
because, the Damagu, by the end of the movie, you realize she's the most racist one out of the bunch, which is how many times she says the N-word and the hatred she has for Sam Jackson.
Yeah.
But you don't. Yeah. I never really picked up on how Goggins, the sheriff of Red Rock, was really that racist. You're saying he really was.
He was racist. We were talking about this a little bit earlier today about racism in the South and racism in the North.
Yeah.
And we talked about how racism in the South is a little more on people's front lawns, whereas racism in the North was more inside of people's houses.
Right.
You don't see as many crosses being burnt, or you didn't see as many crosses being burnt, or as many black people being lynched in the North.
Right.
It happened, but it wasn't as, in your face.
It wasn't
it wasn't as
routine,
South.
Yes.
Right. So, with that said, what I'm trying to say about Walton Goggins and his racist views, and I hope it's okay. I hope everybody's all right with me talking about this stuff, and it's a tough issue. Walton Goggins, Chris Maddox, that character, his racist views are very upfront. He doesn't apologize for them. He explains them. It doesn't rationalize them. I'm not rationalizing the character's views, but Sam Jackson knows where he stands with Walton Goggins.
Yeah.
He knows where he stands with him. And in their mind, the war is still going on. The war is never really
They're not that far removed from the war.
But with these crooks, these hateful people, this gang led by Domergue and her brother, played by Channing Tatum.
Channing Tatum,
They are, and this is, some of you are going to think I'm a fool for thinking this way. They, to me, almost represent almost like an ISIS type of group, because they didn't fight for the Confederacy, they didn't fight for the Union, and if they did, they don't give a shit about honor. They just want to kill. They just want to kill, and they just want to maim and do things for themselves. So, and that's what they do. And so in that. I just find a lot of irony in it, especially because when a war does happen, and war will happen because we, as George Carlin said, we're a warlike lot, and I certainly hope it doesn't. There's already stuff going on. What are we going to do? Are we going to unify and go against this army that's trying to kill us for reasons good or bad, or are we going to stay divided? And in the end of this movie, we see a Confederate soldier and Union soldier, former soldiers, unifying against one force to make a decision, make a judgment. And to me, that's the thing that's best about the film, is that the political undertones, overtones. It's the most in your face with political. It's the most in your face with his political. Ever since he started more political stuff in Inglourious Basterds. Yeah. Really.
Well, the final thing I'll say about the movie is, I agree with everything, and that's a great way to look at it. But I also think it's just one of those movies. I wasn't crazy about it at first. I didn't like the way Channing Tatum's character got killed off so quickly. I thought that the hanging at the end was very brutal. But Tim Roth did mention that if you're to hang someone, it's got to be done by someone with dispassion, and I think that the dispassion kind of fit the bill of Samuel Jackson.
That's right. That's a really good callback. Yeah.
Because you're not going to pick that up unless you watch it a couple times.
Yeah.
And it's once again, it's a great hangout movie. It's a great movie to get to know the characters. It's a great movie to drink coffee to. You don't want to, but you can't take it too. it might be a little bit disgusting to drink coffee to it. If
I
you
don't
think
know
it's
about that, but
yeah, right.
One thing I'll say about it,
and the whole thing with the cold and having to nail the door shut twice. I just think it's really cool looking back on it.
Yeah, one thing I'll say about it as a film fan is, I think the pacing could have been a lot better.
Okay, the pacing could have been a lot better.
I think the pacing could have been much better. I'm just gonna check my voicemail and make sure there's no emergency.
Okay, yeah, sure.
But the pacing for Hateful Eight is like a stick in the mud sometimes, and I think anybody, if you haven't seen it and you really liked like True Romance or Django, the pacing is so much more friendlier to your viewer. Whereas this one, he tried to do something different. He tried to really do like a slow grind.
And it does have kind of like an underground appeal to it, more than anything he's done in recent memory.
It's like a horror film. It's like a gory horror film in some ways. Yeah. Go ahead, start your next one.
Okay, so now we move on to number 3, which is Reservoir Dogs. This is Tarantino's like first major motion picture. So what still holds up about Reservoir Dogs, and what kind of hurts it for you?
Well, I'm glad you asked it that way. We talked a little bit about it yesterday, and so Reservoir Dogs, many years ago, I would say 10, 15 years ago, I probably would have had it in my top 3. But to be honest with you, it's become one of my least favorite Tarantino movies, probably to the surprise of a lot of people out there, because I think there are a lot of people that's still their favorite. But for me, and it is a great first feature film. I mean, it's probably one of the best like first films any director has ever done. It's very good.
Yeah, most of the other directors had a warm-up period.
Right.
Like even Scorsese. You know.
Yeah, they had a warm. They had a.
Well, how would you compare Reservoir Dogs to Mean Streets? This is like Tarantino's Mean Streets.
That's an interesting comparison.
It's pretty much a toss. Mean Streets wasn't a bad movie.
No, Mean Streets was good. Scorsese.
Was it Scorsese's first?
Scorsese's. It's hard to. Scorsese's an incredible director. I think for me, as I get older, Scorsese. I think he's the best of all time, personally. But Tarantino is just. He's the guy. Tarantino swings for the fences with every movie. Scorsese makes movies where, he's made smaller movies like Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, Kundun. He's made some good films that weren't like major successes, but they were good. They were good films. Yeah. Tarantino doesn't do that. Tarantino just makes rocket launcher movies, and this being the first one of them. But it doesn't mean that I don't like this movie. In fact, my favorite thing about Reservoir Dogs is the Tim Roth character, the Mr. Orange character. We were talking about it yesterday, how great that character was and how tragic his character actually is if you really look into it.
Well, the thing you notice about it, if you watch it over and over again, knowing that he's the undercover cop, you'll notice, like, when they're hanging out, he's a little bit more nervous than the other guys. Like, he's always trying to fit in extra hard. Like, even at the diner, where Steve Buscemi didn't want to pay the tip. Right. So he was the one that was explaining to the guy, he doesn't believe in tipping. He don't believe in it. And he's like, shut up. Mm-hmm. So, I think he always, even with the Pam Grier story, like, he always kind of tried a little, you could see him trying to fit in a little bit harder than the rest of them.
You could see him trying. Well, it's funny, the first time I saw Reservoir Dogs, the first time you watch it, you probably don't pick up, unless you're a very instinctual person, you probably don't pick up on those subtleties so much. No. If you're really thinking about what
the first time you see it, you just kind of put them all in the same boat. Mm-hmm. All the characters.
Right.
Yeah, but the more you watch it, the more each and every one is different. Even though they don't have a name, they have a color. But they're all very, very different and unique from Steve Buscemi's character to Harvey Keitel. And we were saying that the heart of the movie is really the relationship that Harvey Keitel and Tim Roth have after Tim Roth gets shot. Right. That really becomes like the heart of the movie.
It truly is. There's a lot of irony in it, and and it's tough. This kind of cops and robbers things that happens in Reservoir Dogs and other crime movies like this. I think what Tarantino does here, which I think we should continue to applaud, is this Mr. White character shows his vulnerability and really wants to be this big brother, almost fatherly type to Mr. Orange, this young kid who he sees.
Yeah.
And the irony is that Mr. White, we know that he was on another job where there was an undercover cop. He said, I must be jinxed. I was on
right. Must be fucking jinxed.
And the person that he's caring for and standing up for to the very death
is the undercover cop.
Is the guy who's basically trying to bring him down.
Right.
And the tragic thing about the Tim Roth character is that he just starts developing respect. I really believe that he starts developing respect for Mr. White because he can see that. And
it was kind of like one of those things where I think he got in too deep. Well, where at the bank robbery, it's just he just had some bad luck, but he was in too deep.
Yeah,
I don't think he wanted it to get that far.
Well, I remember. I don't know if it's a great movie, but I remember I've seen it before when I was a kid. I remember Donnie Brasco with Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
He and his wife looks at him and says, "You're becoming one of them," because
he was a rat, right?
Yeah.
Undercover Donnie Brasco.
And he, it really is kind of a very compelling story when you have that dynamic. And what I find tragic about even more tragic about the Tim Roth character. Yeah. Is that you mentioned the diner scene, and the first thing I thought, I wasn't thinking of the beginning of the movie, I was thinking of the diner scene when he's sitting across from the black cop, who's basically his lieutenant, I believe. He doesn't look like he fits in with him either. So when you're in these types of situations as a cop, you don't fit in anywhere.
Yeah.
Your whole job is to pretend that you fit in, but you never really fit in.
Right.
And there's something that I think there's something relatable about that, even if you're just taking a new job or going to a new school or this is I know I'm kind of getting away from the movie here, but it's that sort of stuff that really makes me want to go back and watch films when I relate to it that way. And there's something incredibly relatable, and you can give it up for Tim Roth. My God, Tim Roth is, to me, this performance deserves a BAC award, give him an Academy Award because of this friggin' movie that he did. I just think he was so good. I thought he was amazing.
Well, that was him shooting Michael Madsen before he cuts the cop ears off. Mm-hmm. That's the holy shit moment of the film. That really is the shot. That was the first shocking Tarantino moment. I guess. I don't think anyone I don't think anyone saw that coming. Right. That was cool. The other thing I wanted to say about it, Siskel and Ebert didn't like the movie. They thought it was. I think they thought it was interesting that the movie shows robbers and what do you call it? Just bank robbers. Aside to them that you don't normally see. You see the personality, but they wished it kind of explored more. I think that was their complaint with it.
Right.
They wish it went further.
Well, and that's I agree with them, and I think part of what they were getting at is that the movies, especially compared to,
you could tell they had a small budget,
to the follow-up, which was a smash. We're still talking.
Well, you think the problem was the budget was too small, so that's why they didn't really show a lot of the bank robbery. They kind of kept it. It's a lot of Hateful Eight, where the Hateful Eight took place at the haberdashery for most of the movie. This took place mostly in the warehouse.
I think if you show the bank robbery, it's a completely different film. I don't think.
Yeah, you don't see any. You don't see anything inside the bank.
I think
you just see the aftermath.
Right. I think that Tarantino showed us everything he should have showed us, but for the movie that he wrote and the movie that he made, it's just one-dimensional.
Yeah.
Unlike the next two films we're going to talk about.
Well, they do show the characters, they do show a prelude with a lot of the characters when they got out of jail, or Harvey, or how they hired Harvey Keitel.
True.
And how they came up with the names for the colors and the names.
Right.
Mr. White.
But and it's funny, but how long is this movie? It's less than 100 minutes.
90 minutes, yeah. I don't think they had that much of a budget. I think if Tarantino had a bigger budget, it would have been a bigger movie.
Might have been longer.
Yeah. You probably would have seen 3 hours. Plus, you would have seen a lot of these characters. You would have seen more of an introduction to the characters. I would say.
Well, yeah.
Instead of it being cut down to 5 minutes,
sure,
they would have expanded it. It would have went further than just them meeting in the office.
Well, we were talking about Hateful Eight. That was the last one that we did. And the interesting thing about Hateful Eight kind of feels like Reservoir Dogs in some ways.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Because of the warehouse, right?
It's all contained into one location for 70-80% of the movie.
And everyone pretty much gets killed off, too.
But, Walton Goggins and Sam Jackson and Kurt Russell, these characters have a lot more depth, in my opinion. than Mr. White, Mr. Orange, Mr. Pink.
Well, you
Great
got to know
characters.
them a little bit more before the action started.
Exactly. They're very different movies in that regard.
Yeah.
But I think
Reservoir Dogs, when they're introduced, you basically got about 7 or 8 guys all together. With Hateful Eight, you got to see 2 or 3 people interact. Mm-hmm. Then you had another one join in, and then you had to see another 3 people interact, and then they kind of waited before they all kind of joined together.
Right.
There was a little bit more of a warm up period. So
True.
I guess
that's fun thing to do, is to watch this filmmaker, his first film and then his most recent film, and compare those two. I think that's actually a really, really fun thing to be able to do.
It's a very dark movie, and I think it was very. I just think location-wise, you just wanted them to go and explore more. I could see that.
Yeah. Well, that's why the commode story when Tim Roth is
you do get
memorizing the lines. That's my favorite part of the film, because we get away from the warehouse.
Yeah, you kind of get away from everything.
To me, Mr. Orange is the only character, with the exception of maybe Mr. White, that we really get to go deep with and learn about him and relate to him. Yeah. So I think that that's why.
Yeah, like if Tarantino had more of a budget, you probably would have seen, the really, really dark side to like Michael Madsen's character. He probably would have really showed you like the Vega brothers and how twisted they were before he went to jail.
Right, because
or maybe you would have even seen him in jail.
Because because the Michael Madsen character doesn't have a whole lot of depth beyond, well, he's just he's cool, but he's a psycho.
Yeah, they don't show Harvey Keitel was really upset at the way he acted in the bank. You don't get to see any of that. You just kind of have to imagine it.
Right.
And I think him cutting him trying to cut the ear off of him cutting the ear off of the cop, it kind of, you kind of get the point, because that was so extreme. So
yeah, it was extreme. Yeah.
So all right, so that's Reservoir Dogs. That's his first movie.
What a movie.
Yeah, True Romance. So actually he got the money to fund Reservoir Dogs from the True Romance script, right? Is that correct?
He sold the script.
But Reservoir Dogs ironically came out before True Romance.
It did.
Because it took longer to make.
Because it takes a while for some of these movies to get made.
Reservoir Dogs could have been filmed in like 2 weeks or something like that.
It probably could have been. Yeah.
All right, so let's jump to Jackie Brown at number 2. Now you made an interesting comment about how as you've gotten older, Jackie Brown has aged very well for you. Do you still agree with that?
Yeah, very much so. The characters. Let me tell you, everybody who has, because a lot of people still haven't seen Jackie Brown.
Yeah, it's kind of gotten lost with some of the newer generation.
Yeah, that's why it's one of the reasons why Tarantino, when he goes on radio shows, he'll still wear Jackie Brown stuff, because
this is his most underrated movie.
Yeah. The characters, to me, in Jackie Brown are the best characters he's probably ever written. Yeah. I think they have some of the most depth. I think they're some of the most relatable characters. And as I get older, the characters get better and better and better. I think the movie, in certain spots, it still has its flaws for me. But I just think that the characters are so good and so well acted and so well written. The character of Max Cherry is the one that I think, I see my father in, I see myself in, I see you in, I see people that I've known my whole life in that character. And as we get older, we're going to be able to relate to those people more and more. He's going back to what I said about Bud in Kill Bill Volume 2. He's really good at writing characters who had their glory day, and now they're living life, dealing with what is it like to live life after, and that's the whole Jackie Brown character, And I know this is I know it's number 2 on your list, but I know this has been your personal favorite for many years.
Yeah.
So what do you like most about the film?
Well, I think I've said enough about it being a hangout movie. Obviously, the characters are more well defined. You finally get to see Tarantino do a linear movie with this movie as well. But the last couple times I watched it, what really got to me was Samuel L. Jackson's style of living and how he just loved that lifestyle, but at the same time it was very risky, and for him to have it taken all away. Obviously, this could be taken away easily. If you have the cops watching you, you have someone snitch you out or rat you out. just the paranoia of and the stress of what he loved what he was doing, but it really showed you the frustrations that it came with of it being taken all away. And that's what really kind of resonated with me the last time I saw it. And the frustrations of dealing with, De Niro for not being responsible, for Pam Grier for turning on him. It's just, you could just see the paranoia of trying to get away with something you love, but at the same time, just how, how overwhelming it could be psychologically. Because you got, you have the cops watching your every step, That's what really got to me.
Yeah, no, the character of Ordell is the cornerstone of this film. Max Cherry may be the heart in my mind. To me, he's the heart, but Ordell's character really is the cornerstone, the backbone, and Samuel L. Jackson's performance in that character is so crucial. He really is like a big kid. But, it goes back to the saying, if you want to get something done right, you do it yourself. Yeah. And here he's surrounding himself.
That's from Training Day. Yeah.
He's surrounding himself with people. That's an old saying. It's been said for years and been censored for decades.
There's a lot of parallels between the Training Day character and this Samuel L. Jackson character, I would say. Yeah. They're both trying to get away with something really illegal.
Right. Yeah. Well, I never made that comparison before. I never made that comparison. Dude,
Well, Denzel's trying to use someone to pay somebody off, and Samuel Jackson's just trying to make a boatload of money by selling illegal weapons and trying to do it under the cop's nose. So it's
sure. I think the difference there is the fact that Denzel is playing a crooked cop.
Right.
With all his philosophies and all his moral rationalizing, whereas with Sam Jackson, there's a lot less, rationalizing. He's basically, look, I'm dealing guns, but no one has to know about it. And I'm doing my thing, and I'm having a screwdriver, at 2 p.m. But
the other, the thing that really got to me, and I'll just expand on it. It's like. The people that he has around him is kind of like he had to micromanage them, and then it finally started catching up to him in this movie. And when he's in the van with De Niro, when the money's not there, you could just feel the frustration. It felt so real. To me, that's one of his best scenes ever, when he kills De Niro in the van.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's one of his. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he's like, "What the fuck happened to you?" Like it's like this isn't the guy that I trusted. Like it's a different guy.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Right, exactly. Yeah.
But go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's a very interesting element of his character. It's not that he makes that comment, you can't trust Melanie, but you can trust Melanie to be Melanie.
Right.
But he thought De Niro's character was someone else that he wasn't anymore. You know, and so he couldn't trust De Niro to be De Niro.
Right.
He couldn't. He didn't really have a
no, De Niro really didn't do. He didn't do anything wrong. It's just, looking back on it, it's just that he just didn't make sure everything went through.
Right. Yeah. Well. Exactly. No, he messed up, man.
Right.
Because they didn't get the money,
right.
And
Well, the bag felt right though.
Yeah, but. Check the bag.
Check the bag anyway.
Check the bag. And don't kill the person you're on the job with.
Yeah.
So, no, I disagree. I think De Niro did a lot wrong. And I think that Samuel L. Jackson actually had a lot more.
Yeah, but I can see why De Niro didn't check the bag, though, because you got all those cameras out there. You got people, probably watching them and everything.
Yeah. That's the comedy of it. I think Sam Jackson had a lot more fuzzy, warm feelings for Melanie than he was letting on.
Yeah. But the Samuel L. Jackson character, while I can understand his paranoia, it was still an evil character because he was willing to kill. Anyone that was had anything to do with potentially snitching on him to the cops, he was willing to kill.
Right.
He killed Beaumont, and he probably was going to kill Jackie Brown if Jackie didn't see it coming.
Right.
So
it
is an evil character.
You're right. A big core of his character was control.
Yeah.
And controlling the situation. And the fun thing to watch unravel is the fact that he's the entire movie from the very beginning, he just starts losing more and more control.
Yeah.
And everybody's kind of in on the feds, Jackie Brown, even Melanie and De Niro, to everybody's, whether it's intended or inadvertently, everybody's kind of in on making Sam Jackson lose control of his life and his situation. And so it's a lot. It's fun to watch that happen.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen it, the dialogue is just so good. And
it's a very funny movie, and with Samuel Jackson's character as well. Even though he is bad, like, I don't think I've ever found myself rooting for a bad guy this much. Like, you do like, even though he is bad, you do kind of find him funny, and you do kind of root for him as well.
Exactly. Well, I think that's a big thread of a lot of Tarantino's characters. Even though I know this was adapted from a Elmore Leonard novel, is that he writes his characters. They're so multi-dimensional in that they could be the villain of the movie, but we want to be them. We really like them,
right. No, I mean, you love his lifestyle. He's got, the hot blonde sitting on the couch, making all this money with selling guns. Not like you want to be him, but it's not like it. I mean, he's living on the beach.
Man, sitting on the beach with a screwdriver at 2 p.m. with Melanie on the couch next to me, that sounds pretty good to me.
That's
I'm okay
right.
with that. That sounds pretty good.
But it is... It was a movie more for older people, and it's more of a movie toward, basically more of a black movie. That's probably why it wasn't as successful at the time as like a Pulp Fiction. So it was. I don't think it was quite the follow up to Pulp Fiction. So I think when Tarantino delivered this, you kind of got to know him. He's a director that he's not really, his motive is not really the money. This is just a guy that's going to make what he wants to make. Yeah. And that's kind of what you had to settle with him for a while. It was
a more mature film.
Yeah.
And it most certainly wasn't, I think people did expect a very much, like, we're about to talk about Pulp Fiction because I know that's your number one.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. I think it's my number one too. It's hard to not put it at number one. But Jackie Brown, in a way, has like I said, the characters are deeper, and unlike Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown isn't about the shit hitting the fan moment for every character, every story. Right. Because Pulp Fiction, that's kind of what Pulp Fiction is basically revolving around, is these moments where shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
Jackie Brown doesn't really have those shit hitting the fan moments.
Right.
It's when someone dies, it's a much slower build. And when the person dies, you see it coming and you watch it and you feel it. And Pulp Fiction, it happens out of nowhere. So, and that's why people didn't get at that time what they thought they were going to get. It's a much deeper movie. It's a much more slower build than Pulp Fiction. So
all right. So what do you want to say about Pulp Fiction that hasn't been said before?
Oh man. Well, once again, shit hitting the fan. Man, Pulp Fiction. It's so hard to get in and out because we've said so much over the years. It really is like a record that you play over and over again, and the DVD or the Blu-ray, it just never seems to get worn out. For me, anyway, there's a color to the movie. Every time I think about it, there's that bright color, the shining from the briefcase that just kind of illuminates in my mind of the entire movie. I think I really like the cinematography in Pulp Fiction. I really like the simplicity of the way it was shot. Yeah. But I also just love once again the transitions. Going back to what Kevin Smith said. Kevin Smith, because Clerks came out the same year Pulp Fiction did.
Yeah.
And Kevin Smith, when he saw Pulp Fiction, I think it was at Sundance or Tribeca or something like that, he was floored at the transitions.
Yeah,
he was by the beats from comedy to violence to
well, yeah,
romance,
that's the thing that gets me too. It just feels like you're going into different worlds, and if you look at the movie, they're all tied together. There's so many different worlds it goes to. That's when I first saw it when I was a kid. I didn't understand it, but I kind of appreciated the adventure of it. I just felt like I was lost in this crazy world.
Yeah.
But then when you get older, time and time again, it really is three stories connected into one, and it really is a story of redemption. It's a story of how to get out of a crazy situation.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, it's a story of righteousness as well, about finding the right path. Obviously, the Samuel L. Jackson character with him, wanting to quit, his crazy job that he had and wanting to move on and just, appreciate it. It gave him a different perspective of the world. And I guess that's the other thing it does as well.
Right.
And it does show you the crazy kind of people in this world, how we could have such sick, twisted people, like the people in the pawn shop, the cop and the rapist.
Right. Well, and I think that's the thing. Tarantino takes these scumbag characters and makes them relatable to us.
Right.
And in Pulp Fiction, you just mentioned, the fucked up people in the world. We do have fucked up people in the world.
Well, you got the good. The main characters are fucked up, but it also shows you how there's another level to it that's even darker.
Right.
Which you can't. I mean, where there's no coming back for if you cross that line, like raping somebody or kidnapping somebody or keeping someone tied up in a basement.
Right. Well, I think Tarantino has always gone against the grain of this character has to be this Mel Gibson, Tom Hanks sort of like Hollywood. He's such a good person. Right. He would never do anything wrong. And in the end, he's not going to kill the bad guy. The bad guy's just going to fall off a cliff because he doesn't save him. No. The Tarantino's characters have committed murder. They've killed for money. They've these are not characters that we want to have at our dining room table.
Right.
But in this movie, they get to make a choice that saves their morality. They get to retain some of their morality because of the choices they make, and that's the core to me of Pulp Fiction, is that we get to watch three different characters: Vincent Vega, Butch Coolidge, and Jules Winsfield. Yeah. Those three characters, we get to see them make the other choice. We get to see them make the choice that elevates their characters and their morals. Exactly. And their sense of right, of them. I think righteousness is the wrong word, but I think that's the core of it. And in no other character, I swear to God, man, Jules Winsfield, played by Sam Jackson, is probably the most inspiring character to me. I wrote a song, I swear, like Kane and Kung Fu walk from place to place, like Kane and Kung Fu walk from place to place, got a lot of footsteps to trace. Yeah. I mean, he's the most inspiring character to me, even to help me determine some of the decisions I've made in my life over the past 3 years. And that may be a good or a bad idea, but I love that. To me, that's what continues to make this number one. Is they did such an amazing job of weaving all these elements together to tell that story, and the way they did it with the three different characters and the three different stories in this California crime drama, escapade was just amazing. It was so cool. It's still cool. It's still cool to talk about today. So that's the
Jules Winfield character, him kind of wanting to get away from kind of being directionless and playing that character. Mm-hmm. That's quite a metamorphosis. But I think I don't think I've ever seen two people try to kill each other and betray each other like that with Butch and Ving Rhames. Him not throwing the fight, and then obviously they're about to kill each other. He tried to run him over. He tried to kill him with a gun.
Sure.
I don't think you've probably ever seen anything like that. How two people were about to kill each other, and then someone then he decided to save his life. Mm-hmm. Like what could have brought that out of Bruce Willis? The only thing that it could have been was rape or
to say the decision to save his life.
Yeah,
that's his moral choice. That's where his morals elevate. And it's because, it goes back to the gold watch.
Yeah.
It goes back to the watch that his father died with. Christopher, going back to Christopher Walken. That Christopher Walken scene is so important because that's a big part of his character's, morals. It gets instilled in him as a little kid, and he makes that choice.
Well, they were put in such a rough predicament that I think he kind of, sympathized with them and gained respect for him, even though prior to this he didn't give a fuck about him.
Right,
really,
he hated him. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's that's my least favorite part of the film. I don't know why, but I mean, I love certain parts of it. But but it's a very unique dynamic between those two characters.
Right. I mean, when we talked about how Jules wants to change his life because of what he saw with the divine intervention, and then we saw, Butch, we saw how honorable he could really be if the situation presents itself. But what about Vincent Vega and Uma Thurman? That scene with Eric Stoltz selling him the heroin. It really, that scene, the responsibility for that scene boiled down to Eric Stoltz because didn't he give them like the wrong heroin?
No, he gave
it had to do with baggies. They didn't have any baggies, so he gave them a balloon.
Right, because the idea you learn if you watch a trivia track for the DVD or the Blu-ray is that balloons were normally sold to people who were buying heroin. Balloons. But he was out of balloons.
He was out of balloons, right?
And so he had to give him a baggie. And apparently, baggies were only given if you were buying cocaine. So she thought it was cocaine.
She thought it was cocaine.
And you saw when they introduce her character, she snorts cocaine before she goes to meet Vincent.
Yeah.
So it made sense that she would go, oh, wow, look at this, cocaine.
So basically, it was Eric Stoltz's fault why she OD'd.
Yeah, it was there. Well,
Even though he tried to deny it.
Right. I mean, I think it's also.
But how does Vincent Vega's character relate to those two? Because to me, Vincent seems like the weakest out of the three main characters. Because obviously, anytime he went to the bathroom, something bad happened. That's not his fault, but to me, it just seemed like he was the most irresponsible out of all three of them. And the motive for saving Uma Thurman had nothing to do with his love for her, in my opinion. It was just to kind of save his reputation so he could keep working and keep making money for Marcellus.
So that thought crossed my mind when I was saying that. And I agree with you that, yes, he was saving his own ass, but that doesn't mean that he didn't save a life. Right. And when he blows the kiss to her toward the end, that's an act. That's an act of saying that he had these feelings for her, and that he really did, it sounds gooey and gushy, but he had some sort of affection for her. Yeah. He had affection. He had love. I'll just say the word love. I think he had love for her. And he liked her, and he got along with her. Right. Because if you really want to get deep into the subtext of this character, did he really have anybody? He just got back from Amsterdam. He has no wife. He has no children. He kills for money. He's a drug addict. What does he really have? And here he gets to go. The only night he really gets to feel this sort of sense of affection is when he goes out with his boss's wife. But can't touch that. Can't touch that.
Right.
And he almost gets her killed. And yes, he's got to save his own ass.
Right.
But in saving her and saving his own ass, he gets to brush up against that feeling of affection. He gets to brush up against what it would feel like to be with someone like that. But they never can. Right. So the conflict, the tension, I think it's one of the reasons we forget that these things, why it's so wonderful to watch that story play out over and over again, So, it's a very tragic character.
Yeah.
It's a very tragic character, much more tragic than we give it credit for, So I love that. So my question to you is, why is it still number one? Because this is your number one on the list. Why is it still number one compared to all the other movies we just talked about?
I just think it's the most satisfying. I think it's the most. I think what you were saying about the transitions, they're not just stuck in one setting or in one haberdashery or in one warehouse. it's very experiential. They explore different characters, different storylines, and they were able to kind of tie it together. And I think the nonlinear sort of storytelling is kind of what gives it its own replay value, I would say.
Yeah.
Because, you're never bored with it. I mean, we know people that are Travolta fans that don't get it. Like Rick, he's like, I don't get the movie with Travolta. I still don't get it.
Right.
So it takes people a while to get it. But even when you still get it, it still just definitely holds up. It keeps you on your toes.
Right. It is kind of timeless. And when it came out, people were already hailing it as a classic. Film students and film geeks and film professors were already calling it a classic.
Right. And there's so many different things that you still pick up on, even like the kangaroo with the watch, or the briefcase. People are still talking about to this day, or what was in the briefcase, or why did she forget the watch, and why was the watch so important, and Christopher Walken's obviously that monologue. You just have little things that kind of, if you take it away from the movie's not quite the same. But even though there are very, very little roles and little parts.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good. I appreciate you bringing up those details because the watch on the kangaroo, 666 on the briefcase, the tape on the back of Marcellus Wallace's neck.
Right.
He throws in all these little. It's almost like a game of Clue.
Yeah.
He throws in these little objects and these little details.
Every time Vincent went to the bathroom, something bad happened.
Right.
Like that, I think that shows you how vulnerable that character was.
He even throws in some gimmicks like that, I don't have to call it a gimmick, but it could be looked at as a gimmick. He has a lot. He's playing with a lot of different elements here, and he's weaving in and out of them, and the movie has a tremendous amount of depth. I think the characters in Jackie Brown have more depth individually, but I think that Pulp Fiction as a film has the film itself is like its own character and has its own depth. It really does. It's so how do you say? And when the Pulp Fiction titles come on the screen the way they do, it's so like this is my movie, motherfucker. He really, I feel like his character, Tarantino, in no other movie do I feel like he is as present as a director.
Right.
With the way he treats the editing and the shooting. He's so Tarantino. This is the Tarantino movie to this day. This is the Tarantino movie.
I do want to mention too, even the interaction between the wolf and Travolta. It's kind of like you saw another layer to Travolta's character there, and just the whole interaction with them trying to clean up the car. I thought that he
doesn't want any authority figures. He doesn't believe in authority figures. The only authority he might be willing to invite into his life is Marcellus. Yeah, but he doesn't want any authority figures outside of that. He doesn't want to answer to anybody, and so he doesn't want to show humility. So that's I love that scene, and I love Harvey Keitel as Winston Wolfe.
Yeah, the Harvey Keitel, the Eric Stoltz, and then Christopher Walken. You just had these, you had small parts. They have very small parts, but they were so significant in the movie that they ended up getting their own movies out of it, which is crazy. I think Christopher Walken and Eric Stoltz, they had their own movie after this called The Prophecy. So just, that just shows you the impact of the movie, how people that didn't even have, 10 minutes of screen time ended up getting, the biggest parts of their careers.
It launched a lot of people. And credit to, I'm not going to give credit to the jackass, there was one of the jackasses in charge of Miramax, of course, Harvey Weinstein. Yeah. But you do have to give credit to that company at that time for sort of innovating the new indie film era. It's a shame, what ended up happening.
What did he say when you read the script? He was like, "My God, the character gets killed. My God, does it get better? My God." That was him on the plane, right?
That's funny. That's funny. But Miramax took a nosedive, 5-10 years after that. But at that time, they were the indie.
No, I mean this became this became the standard for movies. You know? I remember at the MTV Awards, it was huge. It was huge for Miramax. When they made Copland, they were expecting like a Pulp Fiction 2, and it just didn't work out.
Everybody should go, buy the Tarantino 20, and especially if you like any of his films, even if you just like 2 or 3 of his films, buy the Tarantino 20, watch all of his films, and watch the extras. There's a great documentary where they interview Eli Roth, John Travolta, Sam Jackson, Lawrence Bender, all these guys.
Yeah, Lawrence Bender, yeah.
And and Eli Roth makes a great quote. He says, "Look, in the '90s, you remember everything was alternative." He says, "You were using the word alternative for everything,
right.
And that's what this was. This was an alternative to the Hollywood mainstream, the Forrest Gumps, the Bravehearts, the stuff that Jack Nicholson was doing at that time. Like, this was an alternative in film, and these young filmmakers were coming up, and Tarantino was like the champion of these indie film makers."
Yeah, I mean, I've said this before. I think with wrestling, hip hop, and then movies, like 1994. I mean, there was just little things that came out that had such an impact on '95. Mm-hmm. I think Pulp Fiction had a really good positive impact on the industry, and then I think '95 was an even better year for movies. Uh-huh. Same thing with hip hop. Obviously, you had Illmatic and a lot of those other, a lot of those classic albums, and then you had even more classics come out in '95. And then with ECW too, I felt like ECW and Paul Heyman and Tarantino, they were a little bit, quicker to the gun than like a Vince McMahon as far as, pushing this new envelope of edginess that we hadn't really seen before in a mainstream light. And then eventually, I would say in '95, like the underground became the mainstream in a lot of different forms of pop culture. And I think that's what you saw with Pulp Fiction.
The world of entertainment needed a shake-up. It really did. It needed a shake-up and an honesty about how, things really were, and how people really were. And I think that, that we look back on the 1980s with a lot of nostalgia, with Back to the Future and Star Wars and, E.T., these were popcorn-friendly, lovely films, and films like Blade Runner, and films like there was Scanners. Oh my God, David Cronenberg and David Lynch, movies like that. They were there, but not a whole lot of people paid attention to them. And they weren't bad films. I think that some of them were really good. I love Blade Runner with all its flaws, but movies like Pulp Fiction were never going to make it into the mainstream. Everyone was way too like, America, everything's going to be great. Yeah. Reagan promised us everything's going to be great, And then we got into the 90s, and I think people realized, things aren't that great for everyone, And I think that it's, ladies and gentlemen, it's time again. Let's, it really is, and it's always going to be time again. That's what great cinema and great art does. Is it reflects the conflict and reflects the struggle. And I think that's what filmmakers like Tarantino and Scorsese and David Fincher, those types of directors will reflect the conflict and what's actually going on. And alternative Kurt Cobain, Tarantino, Paul Heyman, these guys were reflecting this kind of, I'm this frustration that was, just boiling. And I think it's a beautiful thing to kind of look at that pot and watch it boil. And it's a beautiful thing to happen, man. Beautiful, beautiful thing to happen. A lot of artists, tortured artists, making art, and it's just thank God for it. Yeah, man.